Alrighty, y'all. Hello. We're looking at one of my favorites when it comes to interesting topics, maps, of course. This is going to be mostly maps of like Europe, but maybe some sprinkled in throughout the world. We'll just have to see. It's been a little bit since I did one of these. Last one did super well, and I freaking love these. This is from General Knowledge. We'll only be using bits and pieces from this, so it will be linked in the description down below, so you can watch the whole thing uninterrupted, and definitely browse their channel. It's a good one. And then I'll look at some maps of my own after. Let's go.
I have this other map on the thumbnail about religious divisions in Germany. It's extraordinary how the division line matches almost perfectly with the divisions between the old East and West Germany that existed during.
It is literally almost perfect. Little crossover of what's red, Catholic over here, but that is actually pretty mind-blowing. Wow.
The Cold War. East Germany is almost all of it non-religious in its majority, and while Protestantism and Catholicism mix all over, there are some stronger concentrations that we can point out. The North is clearly...
Yeah, North is more Protestant by a tad bit, but they leak into the South as well. But it's more predominantly Catholic down South. Okay.
More Protestant in the South.
It's like
more
three
Catholic.
sections.
This likely has to do with the fact that Germany only became unified rather late in history, and different states ruled over these lands.
I mean, that division, and then, of course, now unification, is pretty recent. When we're talking about the scope of the world and you know, big history, that's very recent. So you got to imagine there's still quite a few differences and, you know, obvious transitions.
With independence, or at least autonomy. The West's proximity to Catholic France perhaps played a part in them remaining Roman Catholic, just like the South's proximity to Austria. When we look at other statistical maps about Germany, it's really impressive how these divisions, most dating back to the Cold War, but a few even as further back as the Roman Empire or the Holy Roman Empire, are still noticeable. Not necessarily meaning they are a consequence from those times, in all cases, but that the cause is still the same as it was back then. Next, we have a map about the entire world, although separated in regions.
Surname?
These depict the most common last name in every country. They separate
Smith in the U.S. and Canada. Wow. And down in Australia and New Zealand. And it looks like the U.K.
continents, but also into
wow, that is a common name. Holy smokes.
Types of names, with each color
Silva?
representing.
That's always funny to me. Like, I guess if you have a name that's super common like that, right? It'd be hard to find yourself, right? Well, those days are gone, but when you used to have like phone books and stuff, right? How are you going to look up someone with the name Smith? There's going to be like just a million of them on the page, right?
Silva is the most common in Portugal.
That's pretty funny.
Da Silva in Brazil. Italy also shares the common Rossi surname with Monaco. Muller is the most common in both Germany and Switzerland, and Czechia and Poland have different but similar ones. Novak and Novakova. I'm not sure if there's an actual connection there or if it's just a coincidence. In Korea, Kim is the most common, and in India, Devi. And it's interesting to see how some...
Is that Varga for Slovakia? Serbia, Jovanovic? These are pretty cool to look at.
Places have common last names that are still perhaps a consequence of European colonialism, like it is the case with Smith in all those old British colonies. Timor-Leste's is Soares, a Portuguese name, the average number of days with rain in Europe.
Oh, I love weather stats. So I'm going to look up the two places I've lived. Obviously, Illinois. I will say, before I look up numbers, let me just say real quick, the last couple years have been very dry in Illinois. Like, it's literally... I feel like in the last year, it's only rained maybe like 10 times. That's probably wrong, but it feels like not a lot compared to when I was younger. It used to rain a lot here. Now, of course, I used to live in the desert as well. I've lived in New Mexico, which is hella dry. It might be the driest state. And I lived there for a solid whole year, and I can vouch for this because I kept track. I was pretty mind blown. When I lived for a whole year in southern New Mexico, close to the Mexico-New Mexico border, it only rained 3 times in a year. 3 times in a year. Compared to some of these numbers for annual rainfall. These are days with rainfall throughout Europe. Safe to say New Mexico is dry. Okay, so I guess the average for Illinois, which is kind of weird to say the whole state because it's pretty big state, but 110 days, just under 100 in southern Illinois. So let's say like 105-ish, right? Around 100, 105. That's like moderately rainy. And it's actually comparable to, I guess, many parts of Well, many cities, I should say, in Europe. Not quite as rainy as, like, say, the UK or even up here by, like, Latvia, Estonia type area. More in line with Central to kind of Eastern Europe. If we're looking at Budapest, Vienna, Prague. Monaco at 61 days, I would have thought it rained more there. That's actually pretty nice climate then. It's kind of like dry, not too dry, but you don't get rained out of a lot of things. Lisbon, Portugal looks pretty dry. Look at this, Almeria in España, 26 days. That's more like Arizona, New Mexico over here in the States type numbers there. That's super dry. Italy is on the drier side as well. And Athens, Greece, 43. That seems crazy to me. I would have thought it rained way more there. That's super dry. Look at Belgium, though. Brussels, 199 days a year? That's well over half a year.
Of all, it's raining. City by city and not country by country. This makes it impossible, or at least much more difficult, especially when only a few cities are depicted. We can clearly see that as we go further north, more rain takes place. However, there are some interesting comparisons to make. Northern Spain has more rain than southern France, for instance.
That is kind of weird. There must be a rain shadow effect. If the rain is moving west to east, there's obviously mountains throughout Spain, I feel like, right? And there's definitely mountains in southern France, and that must create a rain shadow for like Monaco, even over in like Milan, Italy, right? Like there's got to be something to do with mountains, I imagine.
Andorra surpasses London's rainy days. Almeria has less than a month's worth of rain per year, and Barcelona, Lisbon, and Madrid are only about 2 months each.
Everyone, well, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like the stereotype I've always heard, maybe depicted on TV or I don't know, in just random conversations, I feel like people always act like the UK is super rainy, while London in particular isn't terrible. 109 days is definitely a decent amount of rain, but not anything crazy, especially compared to some other places. Although I will say Glasgow, way up here in Scotland, that's pretty rainy, 170 days.
Surprisingly low at 93 days, at least when compared to its neighboring country cities, and Glasgow in Scotland seems to be the rainiest place out of all of these. Back to a worldwide view, this map about the current status of military conscription around the world. And here it is interesting to see how different regions vary.
Oh, I see. Blue is no enforced. Red, wow, some places make you join the military at some point.
In blue are countries with no enforced conscription, meaning there is no mandatory military service. Yellow means limited, although I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that would mean.
Orange means it exists but is planned to be abolished.
Okay.
But again, not specifying if what currently exists is limited or full conscription. And in red are the countries in the world which force their population to go through a period of military training and or service.
So what is this down here? Austria? In Switzerland?
Now keep in mind these might differ a lot in each main category or color. For instance, Switzerland has mandatory conscription, but it may be civilian, and it's 390 days if you do it as a non-combatant, or 245 if you do armed conscription. But Austria, which is within the same category, does it differently. 9 months if it's civilian and 6 if it is armed. These, along with Finland and Greece, seem to be the only fully mandatory.
Greece, I didn't even see that.
Status which is rare across the world, with only a few countries in each continent having it, and a big concentration in the region of the Middle East. China is in the blue, but I looked it up and found that in some cases it is mandatory. The majority is thankfully in the blue, a sign of peace and freedom for their citizens. Speaking of fighting, this map shows us the battle between the Dutch
and most places obviously don't force that. That's good to see that that's a low number.
One of their greatest enemies, the sea, depicting land reclamation by the Dutch throughout the centuries, starting surprisingly early and demonstrating how much land they have effectively conquered from the sea to expand their country's land. By 1300, the current territory of the Netherlands looked like this. Between 1500 and 1700, it had already increased significantly, and between 1700 and 1900, that increased even more. From 1900 to 2000, the difference is even larger, with 3 main masses of land being created.
So this, oh my God, this looks way different than it did a few hundred years ago. Damn.
Here we can
I
see
did not know that.
How much they gained, with the areas in green being the only original ones, making much more space for their people to live in.
Very cool.
Speaking of where people live, this map divides the US into 50 states, the same number as there are now, but with a different criteria for these states' delimitations, creating 50 states with equal population. This does.
Oh my God, that is crazy. 50 states with equal population redrawn. That looks way different if you didn't know. Look at how big the western states become, even way bigger than they are. That's crazy because the population's so spread out west, and then it's still almost like similar sized states out east because, of course, there's way more people on the East Coast than there is out west.
Full video about them. To wrap things up for this video, we have 3 maps about Europe that I think help us better understand the continent. First, this one regarding European life expectancy. Over on the top left, you have...
I played a game. If you didn't see, I'll link it at the end. I played a game where you have to guess like life expectancy, and it does like a versus between 2 countries. You have to guess whose is higher. And yeah, it was it was kind of it was fun, but it was kind of a low blow to me here as an American in the U.S. because, man, we were a lot lower than a lot of countries. It was kind of humiliating.
Have the information regarding which color represents what. It's interesting to see the clear divide that there is between Eastern and Central/Western Europe.
Wow, that is pretty stark contrast. Way Western Europe. Did my lights just flicker? That was really weird. I don't know if the camera picked that up. My lights all flickered like crazy. It's not raining or storming out. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, you can see that Northern Europe way up here, and then, of course, Western Europe is predominantly green, even into the dark green. I mean, some really good life expectancy going on. And then once you hit Central Europe into Eastern, it just kind of goes south with the numbers. That's really bizarre. Other than Greece down here is in the green.
Also interesting to see, a life expectancy often does not only have to do with quality of life or a country's wealth, although that obviously plays an important, if not key role. According to this map, Spain, Italy, and Switzerland have the highest life expectancy, being in the darker green. France and Greece follow in Southern Europe. A lot of people say that the traditional Mediterranean diet is very healthy, so who knows, maybe that's one of the reasons for this.
Yeah, how much does diet play a part into this? I think, of course, obvious answer is this plays tons of things are important in the whole formula for a longer life expectancy. Your stress levels and your happiness levels your whole life. That's going to play a part. Stress is really bad, right? Of course, maybe your location, your climate might play a part. I don't know. Maybe not directly, but indirectly with maybe, again, your happiness. Are you somewhere that you like to be? But then, of course, your fitness level. Like, you have to be moving around. You have to exercise, right? You have to take care of your body, keep it moving, stretch, work muscles out sometimes. Right? Get cardio in, get your heart healthy. That seems pretty obvious, right? And that can be done anywhere, of course. But then diet's got to be a big part, right? I mean, you are what you eat. Isn't that like the slogan? I mean, diet is, I feel like, something that is one of the biggest factors in this, I would guess. And I have heard, even over here in the States, everyone's heard like the Mediterranean diet is one of the best choices, one of the healthiest you can get. So yeah, maybe there's some science to that because they're in the dark green. They're living long.
The Netherlands, Ireland, and Iceland follow, as well as Norway and Sweden. Then it comes the third tier, but still in the green, with Portugal, Belgium, the UK, Germany, Austria, Slovenia, and Finland, and with Denmark being 1 tier below. Greece is a clear exception in the Balkans, which are all in yellow or orange, as well as Turkey. In Eastern Europe, the yellow-orange trend continues, with some cases of red. Countries where the life expectancy does not, on average, surpass 72 years. A big difference from those in dark green, which reach 83, a difference of more than a decade of life expectancy within the same continent. But these people would have to find a different place to live in if this next map became reality, showing us the amount of land that Europe would lose if all the ice on Earth's poles would melt. Essentially, almost all of Europe would lose a significant...
So if the water, that's saying the water level's rising. Ooh. Losing a lot on this coast over here. You're losing big time up here. We were just talking about how much land got reclaimed in the Netherlands, right? Look, the whole place disappears. That's freaky, man. Same with Denmark. Look at how much of the UK goes away. Oh my God, Ireland? France too? Oh my goodness, even Italy's looking different.
Significant part of its coastline, especially in the northern Atlantic and Baltic coast. France would be incredibly reduced, half of Belgium and the whole of the Netherlands would disappear, as well as almost all of northern Germany and the entire territory of Denmark.
Oh, I didn't even notice all of northern Germany. Holy crap.
Key cities would be underwater, like Copenhagen, Stockholm, Helsinki, or Riga. And
That's
the land
freaky.
connection between Karelia and Russia would almost disappear. The UK would lose a big chunk of its eastern land, and northern Italy would be reduced to half, with Venice, which is barely staying above surface as it is today, would completely sink into the ocean.
Dang.
It's a scary scenario which would in this case be at the most extreme situation,
Of
in
course.
which humans also did nothing to stop the water from...
I mean, this is big time rise. Yeah, this is not going to happen tomorrow. I don't think this is going to happen at all in our lifetime. That's not be radical here. This is like a very extreme scenario. But it is pretty interesting to see.
Coming into land, but it's not that impossible that we eventually have to deal with something close to this. All that hard work by the Dutch would also go to waste, as not only the land they reclaimed, but literally all their territory would be underwater. But their techniques in keeping or pushing the ocean away might be an example of how Europe could save its land from being submerged in a scenario like this. Maybe in this case, Europe could evolve into some Star Wars Bespin type cloud cities. Speaking of which...
There's an idea. Some cloud cities. Bespin style.
This map
I like
depicts
it.
The European flight control zones. It's interesting to see how certain areas are divided and what the criteria might be behind those divisions. For instance, Portugal has a continental area in which it includes its autonomous Madeira archipelago. However, the other autonomous archipelago, the Azores, in the middle of the Atlantic, has its own control area. Spain divides itself in two, with their east coast and Balearic Islands separated. France has 5. The UK has one for England and Wales, and another for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Germany also divides itself in 3, as does Italy. And most of the other European countries have a single zone for the entire country. In some...
Yeah, these are just like the country outlines when we're looking at Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, right? Yeah, of course, I would like to look at more maps because these are just fun. I wonder, what are some of the busiest airports throughout Europe? And then finally, looking at a couple more maps that I'm going to find real quick on the interwebs. This is what gasoline is called around the world. Now, of course, this is from an American perspective. Using gasoline as a standard. I'm not saying that's the standard, but that's, I guess, my standard. So, yeah, in the U.S., and basically all of the Americas almost, it is called gasoline. And we say gas for short. That's slang, right? And people are always like, how is fuel a gas when it's a liquid? We're not saying it's a gas. It is a liquid. Gas is short for gasoline. You're thinking of it wrong. So that I always laugh when people say that. It's pretty funny. Petrol is used in some various places, right? I've always heard of it, when I watch media from like Australia, New Zealand, and then of course like the UK, Ireland. So that makes sense. And I don't mind that name. I could see myself adopting that. Like I can say that every once in a while. It's kind of cool. Sometimes I just say fuel. Also, I think that's more universal, so people might understand that better than gas or gasoline. What's funny is everywhere else in Europe, almost everywhere else, says benzene. Now, I've never heard of that. Wow. Is that like normal? I mean, it's kind of hard to define because, if you're speaking Italian in Italy, if you're speaking German, if you're speaking Czech, you're speaking Polish, like they might have their own words for it also. So I don't know, that's kind of a weird one, but benzene... yeah, you have to tell me, like, is that common if you're, I guess, speaking English in a lot of these countries? Also, in France, they say essence. So I'm filling my car with essence. That's interesting. The French with their top shelf gasoline. Yeah, that just sounds so much more fancy, right? Oh, I'm filling my car with essence. Okay, so this is a percentage... in 1963, of families that resided in caves in Spain. Yeah, you can see it down here, cuevas in España, right? And you see a kind of good percentage, especially here in southeast Spain. And I'm thinking, whoa, lives in caves, what? But then, thankfully, I went to the comments, and it shows, guys, I know it sounds awful, but cave houses are actually pretty comfortable and nice. Now, I have seen these on some like YouTube videos, Airbnb, that type of stuff. Even here in the U.S., in the mountains and stuff, there are famous like dwellings and houses that are built into like kind of a cave, like the side of a mountain or something, right? And actually, that sounds pretty cool. I imagine these can actually be pretty nice. It's kind of cool when you see the mixture of like furniture and framing and windows with like a rock as a wall. I think it's kind of cool, at least if I'm thinking of the right thing. So yeah, that is very interesting that that's a thing. This was in 1963. I don't know how common this is now, if it's less common. But yeah, if you would like to weigh in on this, I thought this was kind of worth throwing in there. It's kind of bizarre. Finally, I leave you with this. This is super interesting for me because Europe and the US and Canada, I guess, let's combine them all, are very bizarre when they compare with like weather and latitudes and things, because the weather on the same latitude is so much different in, let's say, a sister city of that same latitude between the US and their sister city in Europe. So this is European cities moved across their same latitude over into North America. So like, for example, London, right? Everyone knows London. That's way up here in, I don't know what province this is. I do apologize. I'm not good at Canadian states and provinces like I am with U.S. states. So, but you get the point. It's way up here. Now, of course, I'm near Chicago, so I'm way down here in Illinois, the northern part of Illinois. But that's way south, kind of, at least in my opinion, where Rome would be. Now, Rome has a way better climate than freaking Chicago does. What's up with that shit? I know there's more to it, of course. You know, it has to do with water and oceans and land and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that is pretty funny to think that I'm where Rome is, if that makes sense. So yeah, you can take a look at that map right there. I'll give it to you full screen if you want to pause it and look at it. Yeah, I think that's pretty mind-blowing, man, for real. Lisbon would be equivalent to Northern California, same latitude. I just think that's super interesting. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. You got to let me know what you thought of that in the comments down below, and some interesting maps that you know about that maybe I should look up. I'm all ears. I do appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. That's all I got for you in this one. I hope your, Tuesday is going great. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Catch you later.